short ring. When time is up, you're here 2 short rings. And upon hearing that, you have to stop your core examination.
Each team is to prepare evidence cards for past examination. Any evidence cited during the debate should have a corresponding evidence card, which may be reviewed upon request by the past examiner and their class teammates. The cards need to be returned at the end of the constructive speech following the past examination. For audience, please turn off your cell phone or turn it to the microphone mode. When the debate is still in progress, please do not chat or use flash when taking pictures. Thank you.
First affirmative constructive speech, 4 minutes.
Good afternoon. We affirmative side strongly insist that the Taiwan government should legalize euthanasia. Definition. According to Oxford Dictionary, euthanasia is the painless killing of patients suffering from an incurable and painful disease. Euthanasia can be classified into voluntary, involuntary, and non-voluntary. And our plan will only include voluntary and non-voluntary euthanasia. Inherence. The legislative yuan passed a law called Hospice Palliative Care Act in 2013. The law states that patients who are suffering from incurable diseases can request for do not resuscitate contract, which patients and unconscious patients' legal representatives can sign. It resembles the idea of euthanasia to end suffering of the patients. Harm the status quo, violates the right of autonomy. The Constitution states that every individual has the freedom of making their own decisions as long as they don't harm anyone. Euthanasia is a personal decision and the government should not interfere, since the patients are the ones suffering from the pain. And according to Ministry of Health and Welfare, 10,000 patients were killed by the extremely painful illnesses in Taiwan. And 48% of these patients had required for euthanasia, but they couldn't because of the law. As a result, these patients died painfully. This shows that patients have high willingness to receive euthanasia. Therefore, the government should respect the patient's autonomy by passing the law. Next is the points. First, make the best use of the medical resources. There are some suffering patients who want to be euthanized but are not allowed because euthanasia is legal in Taiwan. And treatments are used on the patients who don't want medical treatments anymore. Therefore, if we pass euthanasia, we can make the best use of the medical resources. And the second is alternative. There should be a legal way for the suffering patients to die peacefully. Aside from hospice, there are still people who need euthanasia. We won't force them to be euthanized, but if they want euthanasia after trying hospice first, there will be an alternative for them, which is euthanasia. Due to these reasons, we present you with our plan. Voluntary. Hospice palliative care will be applied first to all incurable patients who require euthanasia. And the qualifications for the patients are, first, citizens above 20 years old. Second, 2 doctors' diagnosis to prove that he or she is at the terminal stage of an incurable disease. And 2 psychiatrists prove that the patient has had a private talk with them, is fully informed about the whole process, shows a strong will of dying, and is making the decision not because of other people's compare. Third, whose pain cannot be eased through hospice. The contract will include, first, the date to be euthanized decided by the patient, for over 1 week to 2 months. And doctors will confirm with the patient 1 day before the set date, and they can regret any time. Second, needs the signature of the 2 doctors, 2 psychiatrists, and the patient. The method we take is physician-assisted suicide, and the medicine we use will be barbiturate. Doctors will make certain that the patient understands about taking all the pills in a single dose and dies after taking the prescription. Every case will be reported to the Ministry of Health and Welfare. Punishment. Doctors that violate the law will be charged with a 7-year imprisonment, license suspension, and a 2 million NT dollar fine. And about the budget, a shot of barbiturate costs about 450 NT dollars, and according to National Health Insurance Administration, the government will pay 50% of the medicine's cost for citizens who are covered by health insurance. And with the reasons above, we affirmative side strongly insist that the Taiwan government should legalize euthanasia. Thank you.
Second negative constructive and affirmative.
I need a pen.
I'm sorry. This one?
Yeah, I don't want to take your pen, but I don't mind this.
Second negative constructive and first affirmative. 2 minutes.
Yes.
But however, how are you going to examine that they are incurable? Because, I mean, technology develops so fast. How can you be so
but
sure?
in a short period, we cannot cure some like illnesses. For example, cancer.
Yes, and so how are you going to identify if they're incurable?
Well, medical technologies right now can examine whether they are incurable or not.
So you're saying that the medical technology now can't identify if they're incurable or not? Is that
They
it?
can.
They can.
Yes.
But do you have the evidence?
Of course. Like if you go to a hospital, they will tell you, like for example, if a patient.
Excuse me, do you have evidence?
No.
So you're saying that you don't have evidence. So next questions. You're saying that the doctors will examine, right?
Yes.
But how isn't that giving the doctors too much power? How can you be sure that the doctors won't abuse their powers?
Well, first of all, if they abuse, they will be punished by law, which is a 7-year imprisonment, license suspended, fine. And also, there will be 2 doctors to ensure that they won't like happen these mistakes.
Yes, but like you say that they may not make mistakes. So this will be mentioned later in our question. So anyway, so the doctors may abuse. You haven't explained that. What if they abuse? So what is the response? Sorry. So where did your punishment come from? Like, are there any resources or just made it up?
Well, according to there is evidence which is from criminal law.
Yes. So can you please read it out for us instead?
Okay. In the 4th chapter of the criminal law, the punishment of bribing is at least 7 years imprisonment.
First negative constructed is 4 minutes.
Greetings to all. Nowadays, despite the advanced medical care and biological knowledge, mankind still faces incurable and painful diseases. The legalization of euthanasia, the so-called mercy killing, became a controversial topic. In this debate, it proved to you that euthanasia should not be legalized but considered unethical. We, the negative, absolutely disagree that the Taiwan government should legalize euthanasia. To start, life is priceless without a doubt. According to Article 15 in the Constitution of the Republic of China, quote, people's right of existence, right of work, and right of property shall all be guaranteed, end quote. Therefore, the life of citizens shall be protected, while euthanasia is an act of ending one's life on purpose. Second, euthanasia is killing conducted by the authority. If the doctors have the power to decide whether or not patients can end their lives, it is basically giving the doctor the power to set the line between life and death. And as human, how can we trust doctors when they make mistakes? Or even worse, doctors may be judging conditions from raw information. Nowadays, medical technology makes significant progress in a short period of time. We never know if some patients are really curable. And the irreversible consequences of euthanasia is too severe to stand. There will be no turning back after the operation. Third, conducting euthanasia and committing suicide are both deaths that are based on the personal will of dying. Thus, if the government legalizes euthanasia, it is the same as giving people permission to end their own lives, making life less valuable. Also, having cases that euthanasia is operated may signal other people that choosing death is an acceptable action. The government's principle is to encourage people to cherish their lives, but not to. So this will be the opposite from the real intention of the government. Fourth, alternatives to euthanasia exist. End-of-life care such as hospice and palliative care can also significantly relieve patients' pain. While these alternative options are provided, there is no reason to carry out euthanasia, which is more controversial. Last, the Hospice Palliative Care Act of the Republic of China allows patients to receive DNR or withdrawal life-sustaining treatment, which is LST, which also includes the advantages of euthanasia. According to the Hospice Palliative Care Act of the Republic of China, patients must be qualified with the following facts in order to withdraw life-sustaining treatment. First, suffering from terminal illness. Second, undergoing expert professional examination. Third, having family's approval. Fourth, endorsed by medical ethics committee or the operating doctor. Since such alternative exists, there's no need to legalize euthanasia. which is, well, honestly, more controversial. In conclusion, euthanasia does more harm than good to the patients and the society. It should be considered a cruel crime rather than a mercy treatment. The negative solely suggests to focus on the research of alternative treatments, such as hospice and palliative care, but not to legalize euthanasia. That's all for my constructive speech. Thank you.
First name, the constructive over.
When you say that doctors cannot examine if the patient is incurable, do you mean that they cannot examine, or do you mean that medical developments will cure those patients in the future?
Well, we are saying that doctors cannot make sure if the patients really are incurable.
Do you have evidence to prove that?
No, we are just
Okay, thank you. You said that passing euthanasia would make the patient's life less valuable, right? Do you agree that the value of life should include the quality of life?
No, we don't think so. We think
Can you explain?
life is precious under any
So even if they are suffering,
yes, even if you are suffering, you still will live.
do you think that it's very cruel to think like
We
that?
think ending one's life when is more.
Okay, thank you. You said that doctors will have too much power.
Yes, we do think so.
Do you have evidence to prove that?
According to your policy.
We're
we think
making
that-
the patient inject by themselves. So do you agree that the doctors will have too much power?
Yes, we still do think so because in your policy you say that you will have doctors who examine patients' conditions, and we think that.
Are you saying that the doctors will tell the patient?
No, we're not suggesting so. We are saying that the doctors get to.
Okay, thank you. Do you agree that hospice cannot reduce all patients' pain?
Excuse me?
Like, they cannot reduce all patients' pain.
What?
Like, some of the patients will
I mean, what can I-
hospice.
We don't think so.
Well,
Hospice.
okay, my partner will later mention it in our council speech. Can you tell me who will be harmed if we legalize this policy?
Those who get euthanized.
Okay, my partner will mention this point later. Do you agree that letting the patients die with dignity is a way for doctors to show respect to the patients?
No, we don't think so. Actually, we think.
So you're saying that we shouldn't respect the patient's decision?
No, but in your policy.
Okay, thank you.
Second affirmative constructive speech, 4 minutes.
Good afternoon. We affirmative side strongly insist that the Taiwan government should legalize euthanasia. And I would like to begin with our plan about the non-voluntary part. Only patients or guardians of those who cannot live independently and is completely dependent on others for survival can decide. For example, patients that are diagnosed with static encephalopathy, also known as pill angel. And these patients often suffer from having an intelligence of a 3-month-old baby, not being able to walk, talk, and eat by themselves. Some of them can't even see or hear. And the method we will take is injection of barbiturate by doctors. And as we said before, the method we take for the voluntary part is physician-assisted suicide, which means that patients will be the ones to inject. The doctors will only tell you that right now your illness is not at an acceptable level, and you might want to try hospice first. And so, also in our plan, according to Ministry of Interior, the government has invested $13,000 per month in advanced equipment and well-trained doctors for each patient that suffered from a final phase of cancer. So after we legalize this policy, we can use the resources and save and cure the patients that can be relieved. The duty of the doctors, it's the duty of the doctors to try and cure, we agree. However, that right now, it might, even though that the medical development will improve, but there will be a waiting period to find a cure. And we must do something in that time to help those incurable patients who are using hospice and not getting relief find a way to get their relief from pain. And now I'd like to continue on to our last point, which is living will. And many patients live the end of their lives in severe, almost unbearable pain. They would not want to continue their hard life with no hope of relief. Many afflictions such as Alzheimer's disease, ALS, and cancer are nearly fatal and extremely painful, which completely destroys the life the patient has, often leaving them completely dependent on others or on machines for survival. And in the case of euthanasia, the doctors need to end the suffering from cancer and ALS and assist the patient die comfortably. Patients are beginning to assert their right to die rather than being forced to stay alive. Nobody knows exactly what the patient is going through, both the physical pain and the mental mental pressure. Only the patient knows how much pain being ill has caused them. It is easy for outsiders to say that, oh, they shouldn't give up, but the outsiders aren't the ones that are being sick. And also, the family are suffering because they are watching that family member that are suffering from the pain. They wouldn't want to see that happen. And as for the patients diagnosed with encephalopathy, we believe that people who are responsible of taking care of these patients for their lifetime are the ones who can decide. For example, parents will get old one day, and the child will only grow up. It will cause a burden to them once the child grows up, and then they won't be able to take care of them anymore. And it is painful for them to watch a child be in that situation. And during the cross, the negative side mentioned about abuse. So the rate of physician casting deaths in the Netherlands has remained reasonably constant over years, ranging from 3 to 4% of total deaths. And according to research published in the medical journal The Lancet, the number of patients who died from euthanasia, or PAS, was about 4,000 in 2010. And this number virtually unchanged since 2002, when voluntary euthanasia and PAS were first legalized. And the negative side also mentioned that it is a type of suicide. We would say it is assisted death. Euthanasia is an act of showing respect to patients, so we want them to die with dignity. And about the negative side also mentioned that hospice is enough. However, hospice care has its limits. According to WHO, 1/3 of hospice care patients had pain near the end of their death. And there are also 10% of patients whose pain cannot be eased through hospice. Therefore, we believe that euthanasia should be an alternative for them after they try hospice first and realize that they cannot get relief. And therefore, we, affirmative side, strongly insist with the resolution. Thank you.
First negative, cross-examining, second affirmative. 2 minutes.
Good afternoon.
So according to your policy, include both voluntary and non-voluntary.
Yes.
So do you also mention that you are respecting personal will?
Yes. Respect to patients.
But how can you ensure personal will when you allow non-voluntary?
For the non-voluntary part, it's not about the patient's will because it's more about the family having to take care of that patient. And of course, the patient is suffering because static encephalopathy is a very serious kind of brain damage. And of course, they wouldn't be able to think for themselves, but the parents are the ones that are suffering from this burden, and they wouldn't want to see their child suffer.
But the families cannot. How can you be social? How can the families know that the patient is suffering?
Because they are not able to walk, sit, eat, and some of them can't hear, can't see.
So are you suggesting that the family can actually euthanize the patient just because they cannot take care of them?
Not because they cannot take care of them, because their child is suffering. And if they get old one day, they won't be able to take care of that child anymore.
Thank you. And also, you mentioned that there are some cases where hospice and palliative care won't be able to serve.
Yes.
Do you have any of those?
According to WHO, 1/3 of hospice patients cannot get their pain relief. Have suffered from pain near the end of their death, and 10% cannot get pain relief from hospice.
Would you repeat about how the patient will be euthanized, being the voluntary?
Yes, voluntary is a physician-assisted suicide, meaning that the doctors will give out a prescription, and when the set date is due, then the patient will inject themselves. So it's the patient making.
How's that different from suicide? Just suicide.
Suicide, we believe that suicide is when you have mental pressure and you just don't want to live. But however, in euthanasia, you are suffering from physical and mental pain.
Second negative, constructive speech. 4 minutes.
Good afternoon. As the second negative, I will now kind of sum up from what they have said during the first two constructive speeches and the cross-examination. First, we would like to say, however, we already said in our first negative that there are such things as LSC, which is life-sustaining treatment. But the withdrawing part of the life-sustaining treatment is already legalized right now. So that means, as a negative, we want to stay to the status quo. And we would like to tell you how much difference is from the LST both useless and suffering. Second, leads to death, and of course relieves pain. Second, it is both on the patient's will, and third, they will both die peacefully. However, the differences. For the withdrawing LST, it is a natural death, which means that the doctors only withdraw the life-sustaining treatment so that the patient can go back to their original conditions, which may lead to their natural death. And second, it is less controversial. And third, it is already legalized in 2012. Since we the negative want to stay to the status quo, we the negatives do not get what is the need for legalizing active euthanasia. And second, there are alternatives such as palliative care already exist, as we said in our first negative speech. And third, we have this evidence here that says that the doctors are the third leading cause of the deaths in the United States, which, as they said, the doctors will make the examinations in the apply for euthanasia. But however, so since the doctors make such mistakes in the U.S., and we still have another evidence that is from the National Geographic that says Taiwan actually ranks lower in the medical resources and the medical technology than the U.S. So if the U.S. has such a high percentage of making mistakes, how are we going to, how not to mention Taiwan? And third, about the punishment that they said earlier. I don't know if you guys heard of, but the punishment that they had was for bribing, not for mistakes. What we were mentioning about is, as we said from our evidence, doctors make mistakes. And third, as for the pain thing that they said earlier, we have this evidence here that says that more than about 90% of the patients are satisfied with the pain part of the palliative care and hospice care. So that means that the suffering from pain that the affirmative had mentioned above are extremely not true. And also, as for the quality of life that they said earlier, actually more than 70% of the patients say that the quality and value of life is actually satisfying as for the palliative care and such things. Third, we would like to mention about the affirmative's evidence. See, this evidence here is only a chart from what they made earlier just by themselves. So they did not give us the whole piece of evidence. So we can really not make sure of what is really in the original article. So this is not counted as one of the evidences for the negatives. And we would also like to say that they say that they want to legalize the voluntary euthanasia because there are people that can't eat, can't talk, or they can't see. But however, isn't that discrimination to the disability? Does that mean that they want to euthanize the ones with disability? However, this is not the same from what I said earlier, incurable diseases. Is that so? And last, we would like to say that the personal will of life that I said earlier can be affected by the patient's family's pressure. This is all we would like to say. Thank you.
Second affirmative for examining second negative, 2 minutes.
Can you tell me again who will be harmed if we legalize this policy?
Legalize, first of all, this actually discrimination to disabilities. And second, the patients that don't want to be euthanized.
So are you talking about vulnerable people? Like the vulnerable people will be harmed?
Yes. Because they cannot be the person like themselves.
So do you agree that we should have an alternative for those who cannot get relief through hospice?
Well, actually, they can make relief through hospice. All we need to do is just fix up
Do you have the evidence to show how many patients can get relief through hospice? How much?
As for the
Percentage.
90%. As we said
Okay,
earlier.
then how about the 10%? Should we legalize a policy for these 10% of people? Since you cannot get relief from hospice, do you agree that there should be a policy for these 10% of people to get relief?
Then all we're going to do is make a small twist in our
Then do you agree that we should legalize this euthanasia if 10% of people cannot get relief from hospice?
Well, then there is something else as such withdrawing LST. So
Well,
there's
then,
no.
you mentioned about LST, okay, then will there be treatment during the waiting period to die?
Well, there is and there isn't. But however, just like you said, there are waiting periods. But as for the
how about the death of getting paid leave? Is that kind of like a bad thing?
It depends on how it is like operated.
Okay.
For example, DNR is
Do you agree that the value of life should include the quality of life? Can you explain more about that? Your partner answered no, so can you explain a bit more about this part? Why don't you agree that the value of life should include the quality of life?
Well, actually, I would like to emphasize more on this.
5 minutes preparation.